Today we are going to start class 10th Economics chapter 2 Sectors of the Indian Economy part 1. Students, in this part we will cover introduction, classification of economic sectors, primary sector, secondary sector, tertiary sector, comparing the three sectors, gross domestic product, GDP. Sectors of the Indian economy. Students, there are three sectors of the Indian economy, that is primary sector, secondary sector and tertiary sector. In this chapter, we will discuss on these sectors. Students, here some pictures are given. Let us look at these pictures. You will find that people are engaged in various economic activities. Some of these are activities producing goods, some others are producing services. These activities are happening around us every minute, even as we speak. How do we understand these activities? One way of doing this is to group them or classify them using some important criterion. These groups are also called sectors. So students, the people, they do different kinds of economic activities. Some of them they do primary activities, some they do secondary activities, and some of the people they do tertiary activities. It means whatever the economic activities are there, it can be classified in different groups. Students, an economy is best understood when we study its components or sectors. Sectoral classification can be done on the basis of several criteria. In this chapter, three types of classification we will discuss. Let us see. Classification of economic sectors. Now students, economic sectors can be classified in these ways. On the basis of economic activities, we can divide it into three parts: primary sector, secondary sector and tertiary sector. On the basis of employment condition, we can divide it into two parts: organized sector and unorganized sector. On the basis of ownership, we can divide it into public sector and private sector. So students, these are the classification of economic sector on different bases. And in this chapter, we will discuss over these sectors. Let us see first primary sector. Students, there are many activities that are undertaken by directly using natural resources. We are talking about primary economic activities. A primary economic activity refers to any kind of economic activity that involves collecting, extracting or harvesting natural resources. And these activities are taking place in primary sector. Students, take for example the cultivation of cotton. It takes place within a crop season. For the growth of the cotton plant, we depend mainly but not entirely on natural factors like rainfall, sunshine and climate. The product of this activity, cotton, is a natural product. Similarly, in the case of an activity like dairy, we are dependent on the biological process of the animals and availability of fodder, etc. The product here, milk, also is a natural product. Similarly, minerals and ores are also natural products. Students, when we produce a good by exploiting natural resources, It is an activity of the primary sector. Why it is called primary sector? This is because it forms the base for all other products that we subsequently make. Since most of the natural products we get are from agriculture, dairy, fishing, forestry, this sector is also called agriculture and related sector. So student, it is one of the economic activity. Students, economic activities involved in the exchange of money or production of goods and services that satisfy some or all the needs of consumers are considered economic activities. So here we have seen the primary activity as one of the economic activity which is related to the natural resources. Students, primary activities are vital not only for the economy but also for the sustenance of the human race. One can even say it that primary economic activities form the building block of other economic activities. It is giving a base to other economic activities, whether it be agricultural or animal product, crude oil, extraction or coal mining. Students, all these essential commodities we are getting from the primary sector. It means it is one of the important sector, and we can say it a building block for other economic activities. Now students, the next sector is secondary sector. Secondary sector covers activities in which natural products are changed into other forms through ways of manufacturing that we associate with industrial activity. It is the next step after primary. The product is not produced by nature but has to be made, and therefore some process of manufacturing is essential. This could be in a factory, a workshop, or at home. For example, using cotton fiber from the plant, we spin yarn and weave cloth. Using sugarcane as a raw material, we make sugarcane or gur, that is jaggery. We convert earth into bricks and use bricks to make houses and buildings. Since this sector gradually became associated with different kinds of industries that came up, it is also called as industrial sector. Students, some other examples of this sector is metal work, smelting work, textile production, chemical production, and engineering. These are the examples of secondary sector. Now tertiary sector. The third sector is tertiary sector. Students, this sector is different from the above two. As in secondary sector and primary sector, we have seen primary sector is producing natural resources. After using the natural resources, they make the product. Secondary sector, we have seen that the raw material from the primary sector, it is utilized in the secondary sector and manufactured goods are made. But tertiary sector is different than these sectors. After primary and secondary, there is a third category of activities that falls under tertiary sector and is different from the above other two sectors. There are activities that help in the development of the primary and secondary sectors. These activities by themselves do not produce a good, but they are an aid or support for the production process. For example, goods that are produced in a primary or secondary sector would need to be transported by trucks or trains and then sold in wholesale and retail shops. At times, it may be necessary to store these in godowns. We also may need to talk to others over telephone or send letters, that is communication, or borrow money from banks to help production and trade. Transport, storage, communication, banking, trade are some examples of tertiary activities. Since these activities generate services rather than goods, the tertiary sector is also called the service sector. So students, here there is no production of the goods, but services are provided here. Service sector also includes some essential services that may not directly help in the production of goods. For example, we require teachers, doctors, and those who provide personal services such as washermen, barbers, cobblers, lawyers, and people to do administrative and accounting works. In recent times, certain new services based on information technology such as internet cafe, ATM booths, call centers, software companies, etc. have become important. Now in this time we have seen the rising importance of tertiary sector. Now different sectors we can see in this. So students, here we have seen all these three sectors. These three sectors are very much important in the economic sector. Indian economic sectors, they are very important. Students, economic activities, though are grouped into three different categories, are highly interdependent. They are dependent on each other. As we have seen from primary sector, the raw material is used by the secondary sector and manufactured goods are made there. Then it is transported to the shop. It means the involvement of three of the sectors we have seen for the final goods. So here students, there is important role of three of the sectors and they are interdependent on each other. Students, imagine what would happen if farmers refuse to sell sugarcane to a particular sugar mill. The mill will have to shut down. Student, this is an example of the secondary or industrial sector being dependent on the primary sector. Now let us see what would happen to cotton cultivation if companies decide not to buy from the Indian market and import all cotton they need from other countries. Indian cotton cultivation will become less profitable and the farmers may even go bankrupt if they cannot quickly switch to other crops. Cotton prices will fall. Farmers buy many goods such as tractors, pump sets, electricity, pesticides and fertilizers. Imagine what would happen if the price of fertilizers or pump sets go up. Cost of cultivation of the farmers will rise and their profits will be reduced. So here we have seen the dependency of the primary sector on the secondary sector and the dependency of secondary sector on the primary sector. Students, tertiary sector is also dependent on these two sectors. As these sectors are producing goods, it is transported, banking facilities are given to these sectors, means tertiary sector is helping these two sectors, gives support to these two sectors. Now students, let us see another example. People working in industrial and service sector need food. Imagine what would happen if there is a strike by transporters and lorries refuse to take vegetables, milk, etc. from rural areas. Food will become scarce in urban areas, whereas farmers will be unable to sell their products. Now students, here we can see the dependency of primary sector on the tertiary sector and the dependency of secondary and service sector on the primary sector. So they are interdependent on each other. Comparing the three sectors. Students, as these sectors are very important, so there is need to compare these sectors. Students, the classification here is very much important of the sectors. Because if classification we will do, then it will be easy for us to know how much production we are getting from the particular sector, how much employment we are getting in that sector, what is the condition, what are the problems, what are the benefits of the sectors, easily we can come to know. Now comparing the three sectors, the various production activities in the primary, secondary and tertiary sectors produce a very large number of goods and services. Also, the three sectors have a large number of people working in them to produce these goods and services. The next step, therefore, is to see how much goods and services are produced and how many people work in each sector in an economy. There could be one or more sectors which are dominant in terms of total production and employment, while other sectors are relatively small in size. So, students, after the comparison, it will be easy for us to know that how much production the sectors are giving to us or to the country. So it is very much important for the GDP also, regarding employment, regarding GDP, regarding other issues. It is very important to do the classification and comparison of the sectors. Value of goods and services in the three sectors are calculated and then added up. Students, with so many thousands of goods and services produced, you might think this is an impossible task. Not only would the task be enormous, you might also wonder how we can add up cars and computers and nails and furniture. It won't make sense. Students, it is very difficult task to do the calculation. It is a very tough task. Students, economists suggest that the value of goods and services should be used rather than the adding up the actual numbers. So students, one strategy is applied here, that is to see the values, the final values of the products. For example, if 10,000 kgs of wheat is sold at rupees 8 per kg, the value of wheat will be 80,000. The value of 5,000 coconuts at rupees 10 per coconut will be rupees 50,000. Similarly, the value of goods and services in the three sectors are calculated and then added up. So students, the values of final goods are added from three sectors, and in this way we are just doing the calculation. It means the value of final goods and services produced in each sector during a particular year provides the total production of the sector for that year. So we count the final values of goods and services. Students, remember, there is one precaution one has to take. Not every good that is produced and sold needs to be counted. It makes sense only to include the final goods and services. As I told you that final goods and services are counted only. It is calculated only. Take for instance a farmer who sells wheat to a flour mill for rupees 8 per kg. The mill grinds the wheat and sells the flour to a biscuit company for rupees 10 per kg. The biscuit company uses the flour and the things such as sugar and oil to make 4 packets of biscuits. It sells biscuits in the market to the consumers for rupees 60, rupees 15 per packet. Biscuits are the final goods, that is goods that reach the consumer. Students, whatever the product is used by the consumer, that is the final product, and the value of that product is added to the GDP. It means that is the final value of the product. So students, here Let us see one more example. A farmer grows cotton and sells it to the textile industry. Now the textile industry makes it into a shirt, adds button and thread, and sells it on a higher rate. In this way, we have seen that in the final product, all the expenses are added to it, and from the consumer it is taken. Intermediate goods are used up in producing final goods and services. The value of final goods already include the value of all the intermediate goods that are used in making the final good. Students, why are only final goods and services counted? In contrast to final goods, goods such as wheat and the wheat flour in this example are the example earlier we have seen, that is, intermediate goods are used up in producing final goods and services. The value of final goods already include the value of all intermediate goods that are used in making the final good. Hence, the value of ₹60 for the biscuits final good already includes the value of flour ₹10. Similarly, the value of all other intermediate goods would have been included to count the value of the flour and wheat separately is therefore not correct, because then we would be counting the value of the same things a number of times, first as wheat, then as flour, and finally as biscuit. So students, as I told, the value of final goods and services produced in each sector during a particular year provides the total production of the sector for that year. It means in the GDP only the final values are counted. So students, here two terms we got, that is intermediate goods and final goods. Let us see difference between final goods and intermediate goods. Students, final goods, the goods which are used either for final consumption or for capital formation. The value of final goods is included in the national income, for example, television, bread or bakery products, etc. Intermediate goods, the goods which are used up in processing the final goods and services. The value of intermediate goods is not included in the national income, for example, flour, cotton, etc. Students, here we have seen two kinds of goods, that is final goods and intermediate goods. Final goods are ready for the consumption, its value is added to the GDP. There is no further processing in this, but intermediate goods, there is possibility of further processing and investment, and its value is not added to the GDP. So intermediate goods can be used as a raw material. Now students, gross domestic product. The value of final goods and services produced in each sector during a particular year provides the total production of the sector for that year, and the sum of production in the three sectors gives what is called the gross domestic product of a country. It is the value of all final goods and services produced within a country during a particular year. GDP shows how big the economy is. So students, it shows the economy of the country, it shows the national income. So in this way, we have seen the definition of GDP. So students, this is today's part of the chapter Sectors of the Indian Economy. Thank you.